Welcome to our session, Partner Organizations Supporting Scholars at Risk at the 2022 Philipp Schwartz and Inspireurope Stakeholder Forum. I thank you all for joining, and this session has the aim to introduce participants to the various organizations, initiatives and programs that are available when it comes to supporting researchers at risk. My name is Birgit Bujar and I'm Program Director for Special Projects at the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation's Philipp Schwartz Initiative, and I'll be hosting this session. Let me start with a little bit of housekeeping. This session will be fully online. A number of participants are joining us on Zoom, and but it will also be streamed online via YouTube. So for those attending, if you don't want to have your name, don't see your name, then just you can change it in the Zoom. And over the next 2 hours, we will be hearing presentations from 7 organizations and initiatives which are active in providing support for scholars at risk. Participants who are joining us on Zoom, feel free to ask any questions, and we hope to we'll try to answer as many as we can. This is intended to be an informational session, so we very, very much welcome your questions. Our partner organizations will also communicate their contact details. So if you have any individual questions which you wouldn't like to post in this forum, then you can contact them directly. And if you're using the conference event app, there's also a possibility to join or to have a chat with representatives of the organizations. So let's get started. First of all, I would very much like to welcome Peter Mcgrath from the World Academy of Sciences for the Advancement of Science in Developing Countries. Peter is the coordinator of the Inter-Academy Partnership and the UNESCO-TWAS Science Policy, Science Diplomacy Program, and will be introducing the new Science in Exile initiative. Peter, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Birgit. Good afternoon, everybody. I think we're just about after midday, so we can say that. Let me share my screen and get started right away on the presentation that I hope you can see. Somebody gives me a signal, a thumbs up. Yes, I can see nods. Okay. So, as you said, I'm going to talk about the Science in Exile project a little bit, and then specifically focus on a declaration that we launched just a couple of weeks ago. The project itself is a sort of trilateral collaboration between TWAS, the World Academy of Sciences, the International Science Council, sort of based in Paris, and the Inter-Academy Partnership. And TWAS and IAP are based here in Trieste in Italy, where I'm speaking from. So we have a website, scienceinexile.org, and the initiative really brings together at-risk and displaced and refugee scientists, along with like-minded organizations. Many of you here have been sort of partnering with us. Many of the speakers here today have been partnering with us. And trying to reach out to the broader academic community, to governments, to donor organizations, to really sort of provide or coordinate, improve support for refugee, displaced and at-risk scientists. We have these 4 specific objectives. One is to develop, collect, develop and share information and knowledge to inform policy, practice and stakeholders, to raise global awareness and advocate for improved measures to protect and support refugee and displaced scientists. And of course, I'll come back to this advocacy campaign in a little while. To strengthen the capacity and coordination mechanisms of stakeholders to deliver better programming and a holistic response, and to develop mechanisms and guidance around the preservation of scientific knowledge, systems and culture. As I said, we are a global platform. We include the voices of at-risk displaced and refugee scientists within all our discussions. Through IAP, my organization, we link to the science academies. Through ISC, we link to the scientific unions and societies. We also like to bring in universities, research institutions, NGOs, diaspora groups, and so on. On the left of the screen here, you can see a steering committee that we've put in place. I think you might also recognize some of those faces as well. And we've been going forward with an official launch in March last year with this steering committee since June, and a series of 4 task teams with different focus areas. And those task teams have brought in sort of 80 to 100 really sort of interested, enthusiastic people who want to sort of provide inputs and advice and outreach for the actions that we've been taking. We have the advocacy campaign. We've had developed the website. I gave you the link before, and I'll give it again at the end, which has sort of collated resources that are sort of hopefully a first stop shop for people you know, in difficult situations, perhaps thinking of moving or leaving their country, or having just arrived elsewhere and don't know what to go to do yet. We hope these resources will provide them with some inspirations. We have done a 4-part webinar series on what we call the displacement cycle, from the initial displacement to sort of long-term displacement. Mentoring was discussed, and as in this conference earlier today, I understand, as well as the rebuilding process. There is a podcast series hosted by ISC. We have a newsletter with about 400 people signed on to receive sort of updates and so on. And we also participate in events such as this to spread the word and gain further sort of interest. And finally, we managed to redirect some funding at the end of last year to host some PhD and postdoctoral fellowships in Pakistan. It's been mainly focused on Afghanistan, and we're in the process of getting 17 people into positions, temporary positions in Pakistan to carry on their scientific research. And these are just some images of the different activities that we have been carrying out. So the declaration itself, as I said, launched on the 20th of April. It's in support of at-risk, displaced and refugee scientists, and we call it a call to action. The members of the scientific community came together to help us really draft out and thrash out the key points of the declaration and the key actions to preserve, protect and rebuild the lives of scientists and the research and the scientific systems that they in their home countries and in the host countries as well. It gives a vision for collective action and a framework to address key needs. And it's a form of responsible advocacy and mobilization for action. A number of key stakeholders did pre-endorse the declaration before its launch on April the 20th. I'm pleased also to see some of you here. The Alexander von Humboldt Philipp Schwartz Initiative was one of those pre-endorsers. Thank you for that. PAOS in France and I think CARA in the UK, all involved as well in the preparation of this document. The aims of the declaration are to raise global awareness about the issues threatening scientists and scientific knowledge due to conflict and disasters, to provide a unified voice across diverse stakeholders that outlines necessary collective actions to protect scientists and science, to advocate for national and international policies and programs to address the needs, and to amplify the efforts, many of which have been going on for a number of years, dealing with immediate and long-term action, and then to foster international collaboration. It's set out in 4 main sections. There is a preamble, which presents a little bit of the background and the need for collective action. And then there are 6 articles of commitment. Each is a specific call to action with a little paragraph explaining why the issue is important. In a video I will launch in a moment, these 2 sections are presented by a series of diverse voices. You'll be pleased to know that in the video, the references and the definition of terms that are present in the actual document are not present in the video. So let's go straight away to the video. This might take just a second or 2 to launch, and hopefully it'll work from here. If not, the technical people have a backup. So if I click that button, make sure the volume, here we go.
Supporting at-risk, displaced, and refugee scientists, a call to action. Countless scientists are displaced each year by war, political instability, and human-made and natural disasters. Some are killed. Countries that once had
So I see we have a little break in that video now. I would say
at risk, displaced, and refugee scientists, a call to action. Countless scientists are displaced each year by war, political instability, and human-made and natural disasters. Some are killed. Countries that once had well-established science communities and thriving research ecosystems have seen these weakened, even destroyed by conflict, violence, or repression. In some cases, countries in the early stages of developing their research ecosystems face the almost complete eradication of the science capacity that they were in the process of building. Those scientists who survive such crises may be displaced internally, forced into exile in neighboring countries, or end up scattered far from their homes without jobs and without prospects. Members of the global scientific community are rightly alarmed whenever a nation's scientific enterprise faces a crisis which forces its scientists and graduate students to abandon their work and flee. In addition to the human tragedy, the resulting loss of scientific knowledge, systems, and data have grave implications for national and international science communities and for society more widely. A number of organizations and initiatives are already working to support threatened scientists whose expertise and skills are a vital resource. To enhance and complement these efforts and to take this work to an even higher level, there is an urgent need for intensified international collaboration to provide immediate and appropriate long-term support and protection to scholars and scientists who are at risk, displaced, or refugees, so they can continue to make their rightful contributions to global science. We, the undersigned, have therefore come together to endorse the following articles of commitment, which are in line with the spirit and recommendations of key global and regional conventions. We call on all stakeholders of science and those involved in humanitarian activities to join us to build a better future for our colleagues.
Preserve the foundations of science and safeguard scientific inquiry, data, and institutions. Healthy and prosperous national scientific cultures contribute to expanding knowledge systems worldwide. The right to share in scientific advancement and its benefits is enshrined in the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. For science to flourish and benefit societies, all countries must, in their own interest, provide safe spaces and systems for scientific to conduct research and share and archive their findings, as well as ensure the protection and preservation of research objects, scientific infrastructure, and scientific archives, including in instance of conflict.
Protect and support scientists and their work in the event of war and conflict, political upheaval and repression, natural and human-made disasters. When scientists are threatened or forced into exile, their countries and the global research system risk losing the investment in their education, their knowledge, and their potential for future research discovery. The skills are a precious resource, and all stakeholders must do their utmost to raise awareness of the need for meaningful and well-funded support programs to provide such scientists with scholarships, short and medium-term fellowships, visiting professorships, and other placements, and to recognize the holistic needs of at-risk, displaced, and refugee scientists. Government must provide the appropriate visas, protection, and practical support without discrimination of any kind.
Support at-risk, displaced and refugee scientists to engage fully in advocacy and lobbying efforts. They are their own best advocates. The voice and agency of at-risk, displaced and refugee scientists must be recognized and incorporated as a central component of any advocacy or support program connected with this issue. Advocacy efforts should make clear that the skills they bring make positive contributions to their host countries while they are in exile and will be essential for rebuilding educational institutions and scientific capacity in their countries of origin.
Develop mechanisms aligned to global standards that will identify and endorse the skills, knowledge, and professional credentials of at-risk, displaced, and refugee scientists. Many scientists forced into exile have not had the opportunity to develop to their full potential. In particular, countries often have specific requirements and regulations in highly specialized fields, such as engineering and medicine, or other natural, social, and human sciences. Pathways need to be created for displaced or refugee scholars and scientists to have their prior qualifications recognized and or upgraded through opportunities to gain experience and additional skills. Authorities should be urged to streamline the recognition and accreditation processes of these scientists' pre-existing knowledge and skills in compliance with the requirements of equality and non-discrimination. Language training and administrative support should be made available to ensure the inclusion and recognition of these scientists.
Safeguard the next generation of scientists by providing support programs for students and early career researchers who have been displaced or are in exile. Building support structures for at-risk scientists in their undergraduate, graduate, and early postdoctoral stage of their research careers is essential. Furthermore, efforts must be made to ensure that children and young people have opportunities to study, which includes facilitating to access higher education. For those who have been internally displaced or are asylum seekers or refugees. Furthermore, women face significant and additional challenges and require unique and tailored support structures.
Work towards rebuilding national scientific systems in the aftermath of conflict or disaster and support the voluntary, safe repatriation of scientists. To reach its development targets under the Sustainable Development Goals, every country needs thriving national scientific systems. In cases where such systems have been dismantled or destroyed, a time will come when it is possible to start rebuilding efforts. This will not only require international assistance to re-equip teaching and research infrastructure and develop bilateral exchange programs, but also diplomatic efforts to enable and ensure the safe reintegration of scientists in the diaspora who wish to return to their countries of origin.
Okay, that's the video. Let's see if I can move on to the next slide. Might take just a moment. But essentially, while we're waiting for the screen to move, let me introduce a little bit the speakers. Professor Hassan, who read the preamble, is based in Sudan. He's the president of TWAS, and of course Sudan is in the midst of its own crisis right now. And the other 6 speakers were scientists at different stages of their career who have been involved in, or who have been forced into moving from one country to another at different times of their career. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and see if I can click onto the next slide sort of more manually. And then come back to sharing my screen. Let's see if that works. I hope so. If I can get a nod or a thumbs up. Yes, okay, good. So just to reiterate the articles of commitment. I'm not sure why I've got that. Okay, I didn't want to click that in the middle of the video in case something happened. So the 6 articles of commitment are really to preserve the foundations of science and safeguard scientific inquiry data and institutions, protect and support scientists and their work in the event of war and conflict, also in natural and human-made disasters, to support at-risk and displaced refugee scientists to engage fully in advocacy and lobbying efforts, recognizing that they are their own best advocates, to develop mechanisms aligned to global standards that will identify and endorse the skills, knowledge, and professional credentials of at-risk, displaced, and refugee scientists, to safeguard the next generation of scientists by providing support programs for students and early career researchers who have been displaced or are in exile, and then to work towards rebuilding national scientific systems in the aftermath of conflict or disaster and support the voluntary safe repatriation of scientists. So those are the articles of commitment. As I say, we launched this declaration on the 20th of April. You can download it here at the link, and you can see there on the screen, and I understand these slides will be shared with you all afterwards. We then ask you to sign the declaration if you haven't already done so. We're trying to collect more and more signatures from organizations. And shortly we will be sort of launching the possibility of individuals to sign it too. There are other resources available on the web, but we're also going to be building sort of kits on how to help the articles of the declaration can be implemented and sort of help more organizations take those action points and moving them forward. So that is all part of the advocacy campaign that we'll be sort of rolling out in the coming months between, as I said, TWAS, IAP and ISC. So I think let me stop there. Thank you for your time, and I hand the floor back to you, Birgit.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you all for bearing with us as usual. We've obviously tried that with the video before, and there's always a challenge. Thank you, Peter. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And if you want to know more about the Science in Exile initiative, just one question, Peter. You already said that in the future, I think at the moment it's open for organizations to sign, but it will be open for individuals to sign. Do you have an estimate when that will be the case, or is that already the case?
It will be very soon, the next few days.
So great. So for everyone who's interested, then make sure to check out the webpage. The link Peter just has put it in the chat, and you saw it on the slides. And if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to hand over to Stephen Wordsworth now. Stephen has been Executive Director of CARA, the Council for At-Risk Academics in the United Kingdom since 2012. And Stephen, you have the floor.
Very good, thank you. Let me just start my screen share and I'll go straight into the presentation. Right, I'll try and squeeze 89 years into about 10 minutes. CARA goes back to 1933, when the gentleman on the left, Lord Beveridge, then William Beveridge, the director of the London School of Economics, was traveling in Austria and heard what was just starting to happen in Germany, where the Nazis had come to power. And one of the many bad things they were doing was expelling university academics who were of non-Aryan origin from German universities. So he came back to the UK, got together with a lot of his other senior colleagues from British universities and set up what was then a rescue mission to essentially raise funds and provide means to support people who were fleeing Germany until they could find new positions elsewhere. And they defined the aims, as we say there, as the relief of suffering and the defense of learning and science. And that is, to a good measure, what CARA is still doing. The picture on the right is obviously a destroyed university. That's the University of Mosul. At the time I created that slide, I did not imagine that within a few years' time, we would see universities in Europe also being reduced to rubble like that. But I'll come to that in just a moment. So to summarize very briefly what CARA does, we have two main programs. The fellowship program is the continuation of the mission from 1933. It's the rescue mission, helping people who need to get away, who are at immediate risk, get them to a safe place where they can carry on their work at one of our partner universities and with their families, which is important because, of course, they had to be helped as well. Our regional programs are a more recent development. The first one was launched in 2006, and that was really a response to the crisis in Iraq, and I'll say a bit more about that in a moment too, where we found, of course, not everybody was in a position to travel to Europe or indeed wanted to, but it was really important to find ways of helping them where they were and enabling them to make connections, stay in contact with their own colleagues and with colleagues in the wider academic community. Again, always with the aim that they should be able to return home at some point when conditions allow and take back with them the extra skills and knowledge that they'd gained in the meantime. Our fellowship program comes at first. It supports academics, and we define that fairly broadly as people who have held a teaching or research post at a university or research institute. It doesn't depend on any particular qualifications. And we have a number of people we're supporting who are actually now postgraduate students because they got their first academic positions on the basis of a master's or even a bachelor's degree. That was common in Syria, as we found, mostly with very early career academics, but also more recently with Afghan academics, many of whom have careers of 10 or more years, but in terms of formal qualifications, only have a master's degree. And so when they're leaving Afghanistan, as many have had to do, to pursue an academic career, in a Western university, then usually they would need to do a PhD first. But we can arrange that, and we provide multi-year support as standard. And so 3 or 4 years support to do a PhD, and then often with postdoctoral study after that. We have 130, as I say, 130 UK university partners, others outside the UK. That's pretty well every major UK university supporting us. They provide funding, they provide places. Where there's not enough money to cover the full cost of the placement, we do raise funds ourselves from some very generous supporters and foundations, trusts and individuals, and we can contribute to the cost of the placement ourselves to make up the balance. The people coming are not coming as refugees. They come on regular visas, and that's important. Many of them do not see themselves as refugees and don't want to be. It also means that when they're here in the UK, they have no access to public funds, which refugees would do. So we have to raise the money to cover the full cost of their placement while they're here. And as I said before, the aim is always that they should return home when it is possible for them to do so. Though, of course, and when is a big question in many cases. But we're not trying to encourage a brain drain. That is not in the interest of the countries concerned. And I mentioned the example of Mosul University. Well, this is Kharkiv University. As I say, we didn't imagine a few years ago we'd see a European university in that condition. But that's the world we now live in. Currently, we have something like 100 fellows actually in placements. There's a lot of throughput time, people starting, people finishing. We're currently working on 65 new placements on top of that 100. And about half, maybe 55 of those in placements now will need to move on to a new placement afterwards because they can't yet return home. So somebody who's in a PhD might go into a postdoctoral position. Maybe here in the UK, we have people also at the universities. We have people also who've benefited from the Philipp Schwartz Initiative and the PAUSE scheme to move on to Germany and to France. We also keep in touch with many of our alumni, some of whom come back to us for further advice and support. And we reckon overall we have something like 350 CARA fellows, as we call them, with about 450 family members. Until very recently, most of them came from the Middle East. That's not our choice. We're open to applications from anywhere. That's just where the applications are coming from. But then, of course, last August, we saw the Taliban taking over in Kabul. And within a few months, we'd had 750 or more than that applications from Afghan academics. Many of whom, of course, were in a desperate condition because they were very frightened that their past links with Western universities and Western colleagues would be held against them. And of course, the position for women academics in particular was very uncertain. It's now looking even worse. As you will have heard, and just very recently, the Taliban have ruled that women must cover their faces and not go out of the home at all, except when it's really necessary. What that means for female academics in Afghanistan is obviously very bad news. It comes on top of the ruling recently that girls can no longer go to secondary schools. So we expect many more people in Afghanistan to want to get away. The problem, of course, is how they do it, particularly for the women and what that means for them. But then on top of Afghanistan, the next crisis was Ukraine at the beginning of this year. We didn't see a lot of applications initially because most people seem to want to stay and to resist. And I think most still do. So we've got about 100 applications now, most of them from women, not all. So all in all, we're dealing with around 900 applications currently. And we try to put those into some sort of priority order based on the risk. What we're trying to achieve, of course, is something like this. Param Haidar from Syria and at the University of Leicester doing some really useful research there. And that's one of our PhD students, Ruba Winyan, Liverpool John Moores University, although she passed her PhD viva. Just recently, mainly in response to the events in Ukraine, the British government has put some money into a new scheme just launched just before Easter, Researchers at Risk. It's modelled loosely on the Philipp Schwartz Initiative, same sort of idea, £3.5 million pot to start it. This is just for 1 year at the moment. We're giving 2-year awards, but 1-year applications. But it's led by the national academies, which are the British Academy, the Royal Society, the Royal Academy of Engineering, and the Academy of Medical Sciences, and we are involved as well, as we are with the Philipp Schwartz Initiative. We hope this can become permanent. It's certainly our wish. It's the wish of the national academies. We just need to persuade the government, but we're working on that. The regional programs I mentioned, these were for people who didn't want to or couldn't get away to Europe. It began with Iraq 2006 till 2012. We have a small office in Amman in Jordan. And we organized a number of activities, roundtables and various events to bring people together, to connect them with those who are still in Iraq and those who are in exile in Jordan, in Lebanon, in other surrounding countries. In 2009, we moved on to what we call the Iraq Research Fellowship Program, IRFP, which really began to focus on using research and helping people to develop their research skills and continue to develop their skills, and to work on projects which would be useful for Iraq when conditions allow people to return, which of course they did, although it's still far from entirely stable or safe. But nonetheless, many of the work outcomes that they developed then have been put to practical use. We then tried a second program in Zimbabwe. It was rather different, in a very politicized system, but also facing a severe economic crisis. So part of that was funding for essential spare parts for equipment, laboratory equipment, refrigerators for medical schools and so on, but also a virtual lecture hall so that those academics who had left Zimbabwe and were now outside the country could deliver lectures back to the University of Zimbabwe to their former students and keep the connection going that way. And that's the example of the virtual lecture hall. Now, bearing in mind this is over 10 years ago, the technology now has moved on considerably, but in its time, to allow two-way interaction in real time was quite an advance. The Syria program is the most recent one. We launched it in 2016. We put 50,000 of our own money in a seed corn money to get it launched. It is based mainly in Turkey, which is where the largest concentrations of Syrian academics are, and it works on skills. Now, forgive the initials, but it just saves filling up the slide. EAP is English for academic purposes. Many of those coming out of Syria did not have very good English and so couldn't engage with colleagues in the wider academic community. Academic skills development, ASD, that is really because many people did a PhD in Syria and then went into teaching and didn't learn research methodologies and research skills as they understood here. RIVs are research incubation visits, short visits to universities, mainly in the UK, to discuss the sort of research they want to do. CARA commissioned research was small-scale projects, again, to help people develop research skills, leading on finally to the research fellowships, which we developed a year or two later, larger projects, more money to essentially take their skills to the next level. We began with a lot of face-to-face events and all these things, workshops, other activities, excuse me, in Istanbul, complemented by online activities. Of course, when the COVID pandemic came along, we had to end the face-to-face work and switch everything online. We are now going back to workshops and incubation visits, although we'll have many fewer workshops now, I think, than we had before, and do more online because actually it's quite effective and it's also a bit too cheaper. That's an example of one of the workshops we were doing before the pandemic and will do again, but as I say, on a smaller scale. We currently have around 200 Syrian academics actively engaged in the Syria program's work, supported by 105 English for academic purposes experts in one-to-one sessions and group sessions, around 360 university faculty members working with the program in various ways, the skills development, the incubation visits, and research programs. We are seeing, I'm not competent to judge this, but my academic colleagues who work with us to assess the programs say that over the period it's been running, they've seen a very significant increase in the research skills and confidence of the Syrian participants. I should say that all the people in UK universities supporting the program are doing so on a voluntary basis. They're giving their time for free. That's the first product of what we call the CARA commissioned research. We had two programs. One was looking at Syria higher education before 2011 and one after. It was a very useful way of establishing a baseline also of where things had got to at that point. What is now happening is that more universities are waking up to the fact that there's now a pool of well-trained and very competent Syrian colleagues working in Turkey, and they're being recruited by Western universities for their own research programs, things they want to look at, often in the field of food security and things like that. 3 UK universities doing that are Sussex, Kent, and University of South Wales. And we also had just a new grant round for larger scale research projects we've announced. As you say, there are 50 expressions of interest so far, and funding is confirmed and through until next year. So that's it in a nutshell. We work very closely with our partners in Scholars at Risk, Rescue Fund, PSI, PSI, TWAS, Fellowship programs continuing to grow. Now, it's always a problem when you talk about success. This isn't really success. Success would be nobody needing help. But that's not the world we live in, certainly not now, with events in Afghanistan and Ukraine in particular. We've also got some extra funding, which we put aside now for our next regional program, because one question people ask us is, after the Syria program, what next? We have looked at Afghanistan, but at the moment, there isn't a sort of a single place where most people seem to be going. And Ukraine is too soon yet, but it may be that at some point we will be able to do something for Ukraine, but we'll see. And that's my email address. If anyone wants to know any more, please just get in touch. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes, as Stephen said, in case you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. And say a very impressive program, and even more impressive, Stephen, that you were able to fit all this in such a short time to present. And as Stephen said, if you want to know any more about CARA, then make sure to check out the website, and you find more information there. Maybe you could shed a bit of light, Stephen, on the new UK program that you spoke about. I know you said that it's unclear yet whether this will just be a temporary thing, but hopefully, even though, as you said, it would be nice if none of this was needed. But if it does, then if it will get more a long-term prospect. But from what I understand, that is currently the focus is on Ukrainian researchers.
Yes, well, it's on Ukrainian-based researchers.
Okay.
That is an important distinction, because we have also applications from people who are Russian nationals, but have built their lives and careers in Ukraine. And at the time, it didn't really matter what nationality they were. Now, of course, it does. And some of them also feel at risk, not least because they fear that if they fell into the hands of their Russian compatriots, they might be treated as traitors or suffer badly. So yes, we do have some Russians putting themselves forward for that. It works, as I say, in the same way as the Philipp Schwartz Initiative, in that for this scheme, it is the universities who apply. They find the candidate, they propose them. There's then a selection panel made up of the national academies and ourselves to go through that. The funding is set at 37,000 per year, so 74,000 for each individual over the 2-year period. Unlike the Philipp Schwartz Initiative, there's no payment to the university for hosting them. We already have a very active relationship through our own program with universities, who are used to the idea that they don't get paid for doing it, they actually pay for it themselves. So in this way, they actually get some funding for the individual, which they don't get through our scheme. They provide the costs. So it's a different approach. We've been asking for it, CARA that is, for some time, using the example of Philipp Schwartz and Paul's also. And it seems that now people have got the message. It's a question now of getting it fixed so it continues after this first year. It's defined in terms of initially to help those from Ukraine. So there is scope to expand it. But the funding we've got should cover around 40 awards. There's some flexibility in the award value, but about 40. And we've got the first application round in. It's not, we're doing 4 deadlines very close together between now and the summer. So the first one has already passed. We've got 16 applications for that one, which we'll be reviewing in next week. And the next deadline is the beginning of June. And so it goes on, and then through by the end of August, we'll probably have easily, I think, covered all the funds we have. Then we have to see if we can get some more.
Yes. Well, thank you, Stephen,
Okay,
for your presentation. And I'd like to move on now to Olga. Dr. Olga Selin-Hünleer will be introducing us to the YOF University. She's a member of YOF University, as well as associate professor at the Department of Psychology at Acıbadem University, Istanbul in Turkey. And welcome, Olga, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Birgit, and thank you so much for the invitation. Let me take care of this screen sharing first without causing any disaster. Okay. I'm Olga Hünleer, and I'm one of the board members and volunteers of University. I'll try to keep my presentation short, but please feel free to ask any questions if there are any loose ends. University is an academic initiative established by and for persecuted academics from Turkey in 2017. And today, however, it addresses at-risk scholars all over the world. And at-risk scholars term is very broad, of course, and in our program, at least, it covers academics who are legally and politically persecuted because of sharing their academic work and their political views. Academics who have been purged or forced to resign from their institution, as well as academics who have lost their regular income and connections with an academic institutions. In comparison to other programs presented here today, of course, Off University has a much smaller scale of operations. And we have a board of volunteers and a small office team. We also have an ethics commission to improve the best practices and handle the complaints. We don't have a stable funds or income. So unfortunately, I cannot just talk about the £1 million. But we just trying to apply for different grants or projects to continue our tasks as Off University. In a nutshell, what we do is to offer researchers, lecturers, and students the chance to teach, share, and create knowledge away from the government's surveillance and repression. Especially in the aftermath of the coup attempt in 2016 in Turkey, many Turkish scholars lost their mobility, and the remote program was an essential need for the academics who cannot travel or do not want to leave Turkey at the time. Our primary aim is to provide a secure teaching and learning platform for persecuted scientists and students, also to support critical knowledge and at-risk scientific disciplines. At the same time, we expect our partners is a very generic term and all encompasses the educators, student volunteers to commit our code of ethics. It is very essential, though, for us to explore sustainable solutions for expanding to support more scholars from different regions of the world. Our first and foremost focus is still on teaching, and we use our secure online platform for classes and meetings and try to refrain from using commercial and insecure mediums. The problem with those platforms, I think, becoming more and more visible during the COVID-19 pandemic. Every semester, we release several calls for courses. The specific criteria for that call might vary, but most of the time we keep our three main tracks, which are gender studies, critical peace studies, and rethinking university. When submissions are collected, we form a selection committee for each title, and committees give feedback to instructors and create shortlists for host universities to pick among them. We operate on three formats. One is the regular format, just regular courses for 14 weeks academic semester. The second one is the tandem teaching that I will talk about in detail later. And also we have online lecture and seminar series. For example, last year we co-organized seminar series with HOW or several others. And another track is the collaborative research. Before the research, it is important to highlight that each course is hosted by a German university. So this means that if a student, one student complete a course on Off University, they can earn ECTS credit following the successful completion. However, online courses are free of charge and enrollment is open to everyone interested in that particular topic. So we are trying to sustain this free of charge principle since the very beginning. So collaborative research, as I said, was one of the important focus of Off University. In our course call, we highly encourage applications integrating research and teaching in their syllabuses. And so far, we have launched several research seminars, conferences, roundtable discussions, and the reflection series. And the last year, we were involved in a first research collaboration, which is called Replito, that is funded by the Berlin University Alliance. And we have very recently released a new research call on critical peace studies in Turkey. So the call is still open if there are anyone interested in. Our digital platform is a convenient and secure platform for scholars to reconnect with their former colleagues or students to continue their interrupted research, as well as to meet new ones and start new collaborations. And thirdly, we aim to create a social space. Of course, doing this offline was hard before the corona, but it is much more complicated now, as you can imagine. Yet we have various online and offline meetings to stay in touch with our instructors and colleagues and volunteers throughout the academic year. We want to create a sustainable digital space, not limited to teaching, but allows online discussions, online collaboration, exchanges, and events as well. So far on our digital platform, we have hosted more than 70 scholars and 58 online courses in English, German, and Turkish. Hopefully the number and the variety of courses and languages may increase in the upcoming events. I am so sorry, but I'm seeing Sophie raise her hand. Is there a problem?
No, there is no problem.
Okay.
There was a question in the chat which was referring to the courses. The question was, are there also courses in engineering?
Not yet, but hopefully in the future. So far, we don't have the capacity to encompass different disciplines. Mainly, our focus is on the humanities, arts, and social sciences. But hopefully, in the future, if there will be an academic mentor or group of researchers who will be volunteer to serve as a committee or evaluation board, that will be amazing.
Thank you.
So far, until 2012, we hosted more than 70 scholars from different backgrounds. It was 58 online courses in English, German, and Turkish. Hopefully the number and the variety of courses and the languages may increase in the upcoming semester, so everything is related to human power as well as funding resources, but we will be more than happy to host different disciplines as well, and we had more than 4,000 students enrolled in the courses. This year, though, we have the privilege to host 2 residential threatened scholars integration initiative fellows and 1 Martin Roth Initiative fellow in Berlin. Furthermore, we are hosting 3 TSI fellows remotely as well, so it is also a new development for of university. And these are some of the host institutions and the collaborators. We are very grateful for all of them, and we are delighted that the numbers are growing up each year. With the generous offer of the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, we organized 3 tandem courses with the PSI fellows and their at-risk teaching partners. And in these arrangements, the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation agrees that part of the lump sum directed at the host institutions of the fellows may be used for teaching tandem courses with the Off University. So throughout this processes, the Off University supports fellows, their host, and the hosting institutions concerning certification, registration, technical support, and also contact with the teaching personnel during the course. And Off University is also taking care of the issuing of certification and also handling the payment. There is a very detailed information on our webpage. So if you are a PSI fellow and if you are considering to engage in this tandem teaching with a partner who is also at risk and who does not have a regular income at the moment, please reach out to use the opportunity. We release new calls on our webpage every semester, and you can also see the news and updates, blog posts, previous courses, and our code of ethics on our webpage in 3 languages again. And there is also a new call for a team member to coordinate the fundraising activities and write a new funding application. So if you are interested in, please be sure to send the application by the 20th of May. We'll be very happy to receive it. Please visit us on our webpage for detailed information about Off University, our tandem teaching program, upcoming calls, and ongoing research projects. Now, you can reach us via email for your questions regarding the courses, teaching, research partnership, perhaps donation. We are also visible on social media, and we'll appreciate it if you follow us and if you can circulate the calls and updates on your accounts as well, to increase the visibility. I think all the necessary information is here on the screen, and thank you so much for your patience. Let me check the chat box if there is any further questions that I missed, but looks like no, I'm all done.
Thank you, Olga. Yes, if anyone still has a question for Olga, post them in the chat now. Thank you for your presentation, and I'm just going to pick that up from the other side. So if in case we have someone here who just heard about the question whether you would be offering courses in engineering and would actually have a possibility to do that, then I guess they would just have to get in touch with you and then try. There is the chance to form other collaborations as well, right?
Exactly. I mean, unfortunately, as an online platform, it's very hard to provide, for example, a laboratory setting or an experimental setting for specific disciplines. So that's the reason why we have to go with the social sciences more. But with, for example, in collaboration with the PSI tandem teaching program or with other possible schemes, it is also possible to create some hybrid formats. So all the options are on the table, and as I said, as long as we have proper funding to support the researchers and the instructors and infrastructure to support the lectures, it's all possible.
Thank you, Olga.
Thank you so much.
Let me move on now and introduce Professor Dr. Kader Kronuk and Dr. Egemen Özbek, who will introduce us to the Academy in Exile. Kader Kronuk is the founding director of the Academy in Exile, as well as associate chair at the Institute for Turkish Studies at the University Duisburg-Essen, and Egemen is academic coordinator at the Academy in Exile, also in Essen. Thank you for both for joining us today, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much for inviting us into this circle. Very happy to see familiar faces again, even if it's online. Olga, especially you. We're missing you here. But let me go on to present the Academy in Exile. I'm sitting here with Egemen Özbek, who's one of the 2 coordinators of the Academy in Exile, and we'll be switching our headset in between. We started in 2017 because of the situation in Turkey, and in the beginning just ran some ideas with scholars who just come from Turkey to Germany because of the events and the court cases that had just started in Turkey. So we did start in 2017 with the idea to bring scholars together from Turkey, and then were able to raise funding from the Volkswagen Foundation, and continued first with the idea that we would be concentrating on the cohort coming from Turkey with the first fellows who had arrived, but it quickly became clear that there was much more need for this kind of work, and hosting scholars from Turkey and other countries. So we developed over the years. As you can see, other funders joined us. We did start to also create a consortium. We first started cooperating with the Forum Transregionale Studien in Berlin, the Kulturwissenschaftliches Institut in Essen, and with the help of the Institute for Advanced Studies, the Wissenschaftskolleg in Berlin, we were able to get some personnel support. We started with a very committed small team and a cohort from Turkey, but quickly saw the opportunity to try to create or make a greater impact. The Freie Universität Berlin joined us in 2018 with more funding from Mellon Foundation and others, and we were able to also cooperate with the Scholar Rescue Fund in New York that matches fellowships. So we try to develop a cohort model that allows us to focus on certain ideas. So one of the ideas was to create a critical thinking cohort at the Freie Universität Berlin, which is still running. We were able to publish worldwide applications over the years. The first one was concentrating on Turkey. The others that follows were worldwide, and grants were renewed, fortunately, because I think we were able to show successfully that the cohort model is working, and our coordinators are working very hard to secure the follow-on funding for the fellows who come and stay with us for 2 years. We do also have emergency stipends of 3 months, but most of the fellowships we grant are 2-year fellowships. 2021 was a very active year for us. We had a number of calls for applications. We decided to not only grant fellowships to those coming from a variety of countries, but because of the events in the summer last year, we asked our funders to join us for an Afghanistan program. The Mellon Foundation, Volkswagen-Stiftung were generously granted us funding for 13 at-risk scholars, journalists, and artists in total. And this time, because of the worry that women would not be eligible for these fellowships, we asked our funders whether they would support the idea to not have the PhD as a requirement in order to allow for journalists and artists to be able to apply as well, which turned out to be the right decision because we received more than 2,000 inquiries, more than 400 complete applications, and many women were able to submit a very convincing applications. So this is new for us. For up until now, we've only worked with scholars in the humanities, social sciences, and law, economics as well. But now we are including journalists and artists, and also started a small artist in residence program for filmmakers, videographers, and sound artists to join us. So it's going to be a different, 2022 is going to be a different year for us. We're expecting the 13 fellows to continue, and I'll just pass the headset to Egemen so he can tell us a little bit more how we work in terms of the structure and the cohort model, and present us maybe with more data.
Thank you you very much, Kadar. To wrap up some of the points Kadar raised, so these are our partners, or like the consortium partners that we work with: Universität Duisburg-Essen, KWI, Forum Transregionale Studien, Freie Universität Berlin. And as Kadar also emphasized, Academy in Exile built this cohort model. So we are trying to bring together fellows so that they can build new synergies and developing research projects together, more creative projects together, so that we are trying to keep them work as groups or cohorts so that new ideas can emerge, and we are helping them to support those ideas from beginning to the end. So that's what most of my work consists of, actually working closer with fellows and to develop their research and creative ideas. And here I quickly show you the structure of the Academy in Exile. As you can see, we have the director, Professor Konuk sitting next to me, but we also have Professor Vanessa Agnew, the director of the Critical Thinking Program at Freie Universität Berlin. And then we have us, like academic coordinators and administrative personnel as a team. And then we have a five-member council, and you have the Council of Fellows. And we have an international advisory board who are guiding us in our programs, but also joining us in the fellow selection process, and they also help us evaluating applications. And here I show you quickly the council members and Professor Konuk and then the others, and your humble servant is listed below as well. But this is like our application, starting from our initial call for application in 2017, showing you the numbers of applications that we received. And then this, as you can see, with the Afghanistan situation, we had a huge bump in the demand or the need on application. So as Professor Konuk said, we received more than 2,000 emails and inquiries, and out of that there were 439 complete applications. So we took them into consideration for this last round of call for applications for Afghanistan, and we selected about 13 new fellows, and they will be getting the letters this week and the next. So that's what can happen. And for again in 2021, for our regular call for application, we received 154 applications, and also for the artist in residence program, we received about 100 applications. So unfortunately, as Steven said, the numbers are growing up and the need is growing up. So this is a negative business. These programs shouldn't exist. I always say this, but unfortunately we exist, and then the demand is growing only. And so now I will pass the headset to Professor Konuk.
Yes, the reason why we're showing you these numbers is to show you, of course, the need that has been ever growing. Even if we started with a very concrete task to first host scholars from Turkey, we then adjusted every time with our call for applications and our structure. We try to create structures to respond to the kinds of needs coming from the countries that were affected. Our evaluation criteria is always based on academic merit and risk status. And we do look for those fellows. We're always asked, like, why did you choose this one? Or we do encounter, even at these kinds of conferences, applicants from the past who do ask us, why was I not chosen? The reason is they're stellar applications every time in each round. And we do try to do our best really to assess the academic merit and the risk status. But we also look for the contribution to the institute that is going to host the scholars. So the Forum Transregionale Studien has a more Middle Eastern focus at the Freie Universität. It's a critical thinking program. At the Universität Duisburg-Essen, we have a strong cohort from Turkey, and the Kulturwissenschaftliches Institut is particularly interested in those engaging with the arts. So we do change over time. There's no consistent measure other than that we look for these 3 factors that we've listed here. And it's especially difficult as we were just discussing this last night at this panel that Beate Scholz organized, that with each situation, the kinds of applications that we receive are different. So we do have to adjust our evaluation process, especially the applications that we received from Afghanistan were really completely different than what we were used to before. And so depending on the fact on whether the applicant is sitting in a war zone or is just faced with a trial or is waiting in a third country, the application can look completely different. This has nothing to do with the academic merit. Or the promise that the scholar can bring to us. So we always have many more applicants than we can host. We do try to organize the applications in a way that to involve many people who are specialists in the region. For the Afghanistan program, we were able to enlist the help of 6 experts who really know the region of Afghanistan very well. Our international advisory board is advising and supporting us with the evaluation, and the final decisions are made in the council who represented the institutions that will host that scholar. So that needs to work. So we are trying to adjust with the needs and the numbers every time. I'd like to show you also the number of fellowships that are completed and ongoing. This already includes the Afghan fellows, the 13 Afghan fellows, and the 3 artists who are joining us this year. We do have also 2 visiting professorships, but most of the fellowships are limited to 24 months, and the short-term fellowships are there in order to be able to help somebody out, for example, with a complicated visa situations or the threat of becoming illegal in a European country. So in those cases, we do have short-term fellowships in a limited number, of course.
Thank you very much. And here you can see the breakdown of our fellows since 2018 in terms of their countries of origin and then in terms of gender. So as we said in the beginning, the first cohort call for application was only for Turkey. So that's why we received a big number of applications from Turkey. And then the first cohort was for scholars from Turkey. Then, as the Academy in Exile call for application became like a worldwide in target, so we have hosted scholars from many different countries. But now with the Afghanistan program, our center of gravity is also shifting towards Afghanistan as well. So, and we already have 1 fellow from Afghanistan even before the Taliban takeover, and now we are going to have 13 more. So in total, we are going to support 13 scholars, artists, and journalists from Afghanistan in total. So this is the thing. And as you can see, this is the breakdown of our fellows in terms of the disciplines or like the fields they are working in. We supported 64 scholars, 3 journalists, and 7 artists in total. And here, this is the breakdown of the disciplines of all the fellows so far. As you can see, we are heavily supporting scholars from social sciences, humanities, political science and law, and economics as well. But with the new programs, we are going to have artists and more artists and the journalists joining us as well. So this is the changing landscape of the Academy in Exile. And this is our placement record so far. Of the 33 long-term fellows, or 37 long-term fellowship, we were able to place 33 in different third-tier educations in Germany or in abroad. And only 4 people we were not able to secure follow-on funding for them. So that's our about 90% success in getting our fellows like the next the fellowship, so that they can stay in Germany or like move to another country, so that they don't have to go back to the country where they are threatened. And then I'll pass the
difficulties that we face is, of course, that these fellowships in Germany do not count for legal terms for a permanent residence in Germany. So that might be different in different countries. I would like to know if it's different in France and in the UK. That might be a question for later. But we are really, if we don't try to secure from day one a possibility that there will be follow-on funding after when these 2 years run out, the fellows would have to leave the country. And in order to avoid that, our coordinators are working very closely to make that follow-on funding possible. It's only if there is if they secure a job with Social Security and taxes, then it will count for residence in Germany, and that has to be 5 years. So just to have that legal background also in the legal issues in your background, we try to avoid that the fellows apply to asylum, because then what they can do, their mobility is very restricted, and that's not compatible with the fellowship that we have. Just here the list of what we do, what we're involved. It's a very lively, the cohorts are always very lively and hugely interesting, and depending on what disciplines they come from or what ideas they have, whether they're a junior scholar or a senior scholar, there will be possibilities for synergies. We do have offer the regular possibilities of creating workshops and conferences, and are supporting them in facilitating publications. We have a Academy in Exile book series. The second book is coming out very soon. And we bring together the cohort in kind of internal circles in a colloquium with closed workshops, but we also have public events. Although, of course, because of the pandemic, we had to postpone some. What maybe is connecting to what Olga said before is this idea of developing collaborative teaching initiatives, the idea of doing tandem teaching, in which Olga was also involved, is to bring the kind of topics that the scholars work on to the students in Germany and abroad. So by creating digital fora in which the students and the scholars who are at risk or in exile can meet and teach is crucial for what we do. You can check our YouTube website, where we have a list of our courses, because we produce these lectures that are then published on our YouTube channel. The new Artist in Residence program is going to be a very, very nice challenge, especially because there will be artists and photographers and journalists also joining us from Afghanistan. So we're hoping that this new challenge this year will be especially lively and challenging us in a way that will bring us forward. Maybe that's enough for now. We're very happy to be here in the circle. We are based at the University of Duisburg-Essen, but always dependent on third-party funding. We are, of course, interested in continuing this work, but the most recent one is our focus on Afghanistan this year, which will keep us quite busy.
Thank you both for these insights into the Academy in Exile. Are there any questions? I don't see anything yet, but I think important point is, and what we've already seen in various presentations today, is that obviously since new crisis areas are coming up, we'll just see how programs and initiatives are adapting to that as well, and obviously it would be nicer if it wouldn't have to be the case, but at the same time, obviously, and I think that is something that all the initiatives and organizations are dealing with as well, is that I think, Stephen, you said that yesterday, that new crises have a tendency to kind of eclipse other ones, and that doesn't mean that in other places help isn't as much needed, and I think that's important to remember. And I think we have a question here on, are there scientific specialities in a freie Universität?
the fellows who come to us are mostly social scientists, as you saw, but there are also philosophers and literary scholars, film scholars who are working with us at the Freie Universität. So it really depends on the kind of program and the funding that we receive. So we have Academy in Exile was actually born out of the fact, the realization that in Turkey at the time, it was particularly the social scientists and the humanities scholars who were targeted, and they received the professional bans and the travel bans in the very beginning. And we are really still concentrating on those scholars who get in trouble because of their scholarly work and their work for democracy and human rights. And so we have not designed programs for disciplines outside of the humanities law and the social sciences, because that's the kind of critical thinking that we'd like to support in Exile, so that when the time comes, the scholars can go back and they would have continued their work here in Exile. So that they are not, I think that's probably wraps up what we do, that it's not a program for all the disciplines like the Philipp Schwartz Initiative, for example.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to move on now to my colleague Katrin Schlemmer, who will be introducing the Philipp Schwartz Initiative and the work of the Philipp Schwartz Initiative. And Katrin is program officer for the initiative. And Katrin, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Birgit. And hello and welcome to everybody out there from the Philipp Schwartz and Inspireurope Stakeholder Forum here in Berlin. Let me share my presentation with you. Okay, I hope you can all see it now. Okay, thanks. Okay, the Philipp Schwartz Initiative. Professor Philipp Schwartz was a professor of pathology at the University of Frankfurt, and he was dismissed in 1933 under the law for, just a second, for the restoration of the professional civil service, das Berufsbeamtengesetz, because of his Jewish faith, and he had to flee and leave Germany to escape arrest, and he moved to Switzerland, where he founded the Notgemeinschaft Deutscher Wissenschaftler im Ausland and was able to help nearly 2,000 dismissed academics in posts abroad until 1946. The Philipp Schwartz Initiative can be basically described by three main components, which are structures, people, of course, and networks. We ask higher education institutions in Germany to provide applications to us. Higher education means universities and research institutions. The Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, within our program of the Philipp Schwartz Initiatives, is responsible for the selection of nominees, funding, advice, and networks. Yeah, the higher education institutions send applications to us. We usually publish 2 calls for applications per year. The application has to comprise a hosting concept, nominations, and for each nomination, we ask for a threat assessment of the nominated person carried out by an independent third person or institution. We provide the funding to the host institutions, and they are in turn responsible for building support structures to award the fellowships, of course, and to offer advice and support. We rely on great network ourselves. We have partnerships with SAR, CARA, and PAWS, of course. We are connected within SAR Germany and Inspire Europe. And we organize events like the one taking place right now here, the Philipp Schwartz and the Inspire Europe Stakeholder Forum. We are able to support fellows because we receive funding mainly from the German Federal Foreign Office, but also from private foundations and supporters. A few words on our background. The Philipp Schwartz Initiative was founded in 2015 by the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation in close cooperation with the Federal Foreign Office in view of the terrible situation in Syria. We receive financial and institutional support from the Federal Foreign Office. During our pilot phase, we had also additional funding from private sources. We support at-risk scholars at a postdoc level in all academic disciplines and from all countries of the world outside the European Union. And like I've said before, we ask for a third-party confirmation of a severe personal risk. Our fellowships comprise a 24-month fellowship, either a scholarship or an employment contract for people at postdoc level. It is fully funded. There's also the option of an extension for 12 months, which is co-financed then with the hosting institution. And we provide the hosting institution with auxiliary funds of 20,000 euros per fellow, not per year, as is sometimes mistaken. Yeah, since our program was launched, we have been able to support up till now 348 Philipp Schwartz Fellows at 102 host institutions in Germany. The main countries of origin are Turkey, Syria, Iran, and Afghanistan. But our fellows also come from 20 other countries of origin, including Belarus, Brazil, Cameroon, Iraq, Myanmar, Venezuela, and Yemen, and others. Yeah, I'm rushing through our program a little bit now. This is a slide on the Scholars at Risk network of the German section of the Scholars at Risk network. You can also find this map on our website if you would like to take a closer look. You can see who's already participating in this network. We have 56 members as of May. It was founded and coordinated by the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, and we are happy to have the secretariat until March 2025. This network is a platform for exchange and mutual support. We organize events and are happy to help networking. And yeah, please take a look at our website for further information, for best practices, and also for additional funding opportunities. Here are our partners, the Inspire Europe Consortium, Scholars at Risk, CARA, PAWS in France, the Scholar Rescue Funds. And I would also like to stress a very important partner, the German Academic Exchange Service, who supports students at risk or undergraduate students at risk. Just recently, we were very happy to offer bridging fellowships for Afghan scholars, taking into account the special situation of the higher education system in Afghanistan. We were able to offer 20 bridging fellowships for Afghan scholars who had only recently evacuated to Germany, who were still in transit countries or in their home country, Afghanistan. These fellowships comprise a 12-month research fellowship and auxiliary funds of 5,000 euros for the host institution, aimed at financing language training and careers coaching, for example. Within the main program of the Philipp Schwartz Initiative, the higher education institutions were nominating and are now hosting institutions for these fellows. We published the call in January, and the fellowships have just been awarded now. Yeah, I can also encourage you to take a look at this brochure to get a much better insight into our program. It's a brochure on the first 5 years of the Philipp Schwartz Initiative. You can find a download link on our website. If you are here at the Philipp Schwartz and Inspire Europe Stakeholder Forum right now in Berlin, we also have some copies here. You're welcome to take one. But please take a look at our website and download it. Yeah, and these are our contacts. Please get in touch if you have any further questions. Frank Albrecht is Program Director of the Philipp Schwartz Initiative. The easiest way to contact us is probably via our email, schwartz-initiative@avh.de, and via our website, where you will also find our email addresses and our phone numbers. Thank you very much, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Katrin. Yes, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat. And I think just one thing to add, which we missed out on the slides actually, is that there is, as we've been speaking about that before, that programs are having to adapt, as Katrin said about the Bridging Fellowship for researchers from Afghanistan that we've set up this year, and we've also now set up an Philipp Schwartz Emergency Fund for researchers and scholars who've recently fled the Ukraine, and this is an emergency assistance program which also is new for us and dedicated particularly to female researchers and their families. So that is another example of how programs obviously have to find new ways, and I think Academy in Exile, it was another example of adjusting to two different situations and finding new ways of supporting researchers and scientists, but also obviously artists, for example, as the Academy in Exile. And I think Laura, who I'm going to move on to now from POS, will say something about new groups that are being supported as well. So I would like to introduce Laura Lauriak, and she is the executive director of the POS program at the Collège de France since May 2017, and she's also the president of the Association Marianne for Human Rights Defenders since December 2021. So Laura, welcome, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Birgit. I'll try to share my screen. So tell me if it's okay. Is it okay for you?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. See it correctly. So thank you again. So yes, the POS program is the French hosting program for scientists and artists in exile. Since the program has brought on to artists a year ago. It was launched in 2017 at the initiation of the Ministry for Higher Education and Research, and it is hosted by the Collège de France, as you told. First, a few words about the genesis of the program, which dates back from to 2015, because in 2015, the torture and the execution of archaeologists in Syria, and particularly by the director of the antiquity of the Museum of Palmyra, which was followed by the repression of academics in Turkey in 2016, reaffirmed dramatically the importance and the urgency of hosting scientists in danger, and mobilized the whole French higher education and research community. Unlike in other countries such as the United Kingdom, the UK, the US, or Germany, in France, beyond some sparse initiatives from laboratories or universities, there was previously no structured national rescue program, and that's why PAUSE was created to remedy this situation. So our mission. So the four main missions of PAUSE are: first, to co-fund institutions, universities, research centers in France, seeking to host scientists or artists from countries outside Europe forced into exile. The funding is renewable for an additional year, and PAUSE funds up to 60% of the budget required by the university. There are 3 to 4 calls a year, and additional ones when necessary. And actually, we organize an additional one, especially for after the Afghan crisis, for example, in the autumn. The second mission is to support researchers who don't have any network in France with identifying host institutions. The third mission is to assist the host institutions and the beneficiaries and their families to access common law services and to achieve a sustainable professional insertion. And the fourth being direct operational support to its laureates. PAUSE tries to carry out advocacy actions to uphold academic freedom and protect researchers and artists in exile. So who is eligible? Doctoral students, researchers, professors who can justify their status of researchers, and now artists. They are in an emergency situation due to the security context, persecution because of their ethnic origin, political commitment, opinion, or the content of their research or teaching, and regardless of their current place of residence, either having been forced into exile or who have left their country for less than 3 years ago. So the severity of the threat and the scientific quality of applicants' researchers are the two main criteria in the assessment procedure, which is conducted by the scientific committee of the program. So the governance, so the PAUSE is structured around 3 committees, each of them having dedicated missions to ensure a good representation of the stakeholders. The executive committee is composed of representatives of 4 ministries which are involved in the program. So the Higher Education and Research Ministry, the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs, which help us with administrative procedures, and the Ministry of Culture. And there are also major French research and higher education actors, such as the CNRS, the Directors' Conference, etc. There is also the Francophone University Agency. The committee defines the program's orientations and plays a key role in the selection of the PAUSE laureates, as it validates all the applications which are selected in the first instance by the scientific committee. So the scientific committee is composed of high-level researchers taking part on a voluntary basis to the evaluation of the application received. And the scientific committee advises also the program and the orientation of the laureates and on the program itself. And there is many committees, as you see. The last committee, which is the support committee, which brings together public figures from the research community or civil society who are committed in the defense of academic and artistic freedom. And they are advocates of the cause and can be important channels for fundraising or advocacy. A few figures now. So over 5 years, and after 17 calls for application, 315 scientists and 20 artists have been supported and hosted in more than 100 higher education and research institutions throughout France. 200 benefited from an additional year of funding, and PhD students from 2 additional years. So more than 500 hosting projects have thus been selected by the program. 130 training to facilitate the professional insertion were funded too. And now 135 post-laureates ended the program and are now alumni, of whom around two-thirds have either found a new opportunity within the academic field or outside, either are in transition, so benefiting from training or scholarships. 10 of them returned to their home country, and 10 of them made a scientific mobility in other countries in Europe or in Latin America. The profile of the beneficiaries. So although researchers from Turkey and Syria counted 90% of the post-beneficiaries the first 2 years of the program, now 35 countries from all regions of the world are represented in the program, majority from the Middle East, but of course now there are many Afghan and many, and I will come back on that, Ukrainian and Russian scientists. 45% of the laureates are women, and 1/3 are PhD students who are supported for 3 years. Nearly 60% of the beneficiaries work in the humanities and social sciences, the other in hard sciences, and for the moment there is just 4% of artists, since the program has been extended to artists just for a year. So the challenges and perspectives. Today, the main challenge is, of course, the response to the need resulting from the war in Ukraine. The program, the PROSE program, organized a response in two steps. The idea was first to give a shelter to the war-affected researchers and artists and their family, and second, to be able to offer them a professional perspective if the situation requires it on the longer term. And unfortunately, the situation seems to require. So a few days after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, in the context of a huge mobilization of the higher education and research community in France and elsewhere actually in the world, the POST program has designed, in conjunction with funding from the Ministry of Higher Education and Research, this 2-stage response to try to adapt to the exceptional nature of the situation. So first, POST implemented on 2nd of March an exceptional emergency funds to host Ukrainian scientists in French scientific institutions. There was a second emergency fund which has been set up dedicated to artists and professionals of the cultural sector, and which has been set up in March 18th and was funded by the Ministry of Culture. The principle of these 2 funds are to finance the stay of the scientists and artists for 3 months in order to allow them to take shelter with their family and to prepare, possibly in a second time, according to the evolution of the situation, according to their project and their possibilities, an application to integrate the regular program over a longer period of time. So to date, in the framework of the emergency funds, the program has already received over 220 applications from artists. Half of them have been already funded, and the other one are being processed. And we've received almost 54 applications from artists, and 30 have already been funded. The second stage of this answer is the idea to integrate the beneficiaries into the regular program according to our regular procedure. So emergency and scientific assessments and a co-funding with the host institution, because for the 3 first months, it's a full funding by POST. This funding is for 6 months renewable according to the evolution of the situation. Within our current call, actually, because we have a current call in parallel to our emergency funds, we received 120 applications. So it was more than the total of funding that we currently allocate per year. The 120 applications cover all the nationalities, but we count 46 Ukrainian scientists, most of them being beneficiary from the emergency fund, but also more and more requests concerning Russians and Belarusian dissidents who are forced to go into exile. And in our current call, we received 40 applications within the of Russians. Beyond this huge challenge, after our 5 years of experience, we have identified many challenges, of course, but I focused on 2 of them. The first one, of course, is unsurprisingly to increase our resources. POSE has been carrying out its activity with the financial support, on the one hand, by French public actors, such as the Ministry of Higher Education, the Ministry of Culture, the National Center for Research. And on the other hand, for the last 3 years, we benefited from the European Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund, which allowed a change of scale of the program, because we have been able to double our staff and to triple our budget, and thanks to this fund. But this funding has ended up now it's 1 year ago. It was not in the best context, and we hope that we will benefit from a new one next year, but it's not for sure. And in order to meet these exceptional needs from the war in Ukraine, but also from all the needs from all the nationalities, because there is always this risk that Stephen and Birgit, you underlined, that a crisis can eclipse a crisis. And for the donators, some of them would focus to support some nationalities at the more than others. So there is this risk, and it's important that the funders don't focus only on the support of Ukrainian researchers, even if it's necessary. The second challenge, which is shared also by the other existing program, I think, is like the question of the social and professional stabilization of the laureates once the program has ended. So to face these challenges, we set up various measures, such as the allocation of additional funding up to €5,000 upon the presentation of a training plan by the host institutions. So it can be language training, but other scientific skill training. There is also, we organized the workshop and personalized support and coaching in collaboration with integration professionals. And we created an alumni network for POSE beneficiaries so that they can share their experiences and their network and develop a network outside the POSE community. The participation to research project and the valorization of POSE beneficiaries' expertise, the organization of scientific and cultural events, will also contribute to strengthen the academic integration of our laureates. We are convinced that these challenges cannot be addressed only at the national level, and that the support for academic at-risk and through them the preservation of the scientific world scientific heritage must be addressed at the international and European level. The coordination and sharing of experience with the other similar programs and working with international organizations or NGO increase our response capacity in the context of growing international instability, and will allow us to offer the most appropriate solution to these challenges. So that's why POSE has been developing a very close collaboration with its international and European partners. Most of them are present here. SAR, SRF, CARA, Philipp Schwartz Initiative, on the World Academy of Science, either on a bilateral basis as well as within multinational projects such as the Inspireurope project funded under the European Commission's Marie Sklodowska reaction. that have been mentioned and coordinated by SAR Europe. POSE is also part of the European International Advocacy Committee, such as the European and international committees, such as the European one coordinated by SAR Europe, or Science in Exile, which was presented. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much for your attention. More information are available on our website. You can also follow up on our social media, and you can contact us. I put in the chat box the mail of the program.
Thank you very much, Laura. Are there any questions that you would like to ask Laura on the POSE program? Then if there aren't any, and as we are getting close to the end of our session, I'm going to move on and introduce our last speaker for today, which is Rose Anderson from Scholars at Risk. Hello, Rose. Rose is joining us from New York, and I believe it's the morning for you, right? So thank you for joining us. Rose is a director for protection services at Scholars at Risk, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And I just want to thank the entire Alexander von Humboldt team and all of the Inspire Europe partners for organizing this year's event. I'm very sorry to not be there in person, but I'm glad to be connecting virtually. And it's wonderful to see so many excellent partners represented here. So I will go ahead and share a quick overview of SAR, first sharing my screen. Bear with me. There we go. Can everyone see that okay? Okay, excellent. So the Scholars at Risk Network, some of you may be familiar with it, but it is first and foremost an international network of universities that have committed to promoting academic freedom and protecting threatened scholars. We are over 600 institutions strong in 42 countries. And I'll mention that we've seen a lot of growth in the past 2 years in particular. And while we've been around for 20 years, it's really in the last decade that we've seen a lot of growth in national level SAR programs, which we refer to as sections, where universities in the same country connect together and form a section to organize their SAR activities on the national level. So we have 16 sections and counting, and we've really seen a lot of our sections be incredibly active in advocating for further support for at-risk researchers in their country. So we have 3 programs at SAR. The protection program, which I'll focus my presentation on, but we also have an advocacy program that tracks and monitors threats to academic freedom worldwide and also advocates on behalf of imprisoned scholars. We also have a learning program that seeks to create better understanding and respect for academic freedom and related university values. But the protection work is really the work of reviewing applications from at-risk scholars and creating placements for them within the SAR network of universities. Each year, we create between 125 to 150 positions for scholars. At any given time, we're working with 300 or more scholars who might be in a position or might be seeking one. And since our creation, we've created 1,700 positions for scholars. And I'll talk a little bit about our model, but I'll note that what's perhaps different about the SAR model is that the universities themselves fund the positions. We don't provide scholarships or fellowships for the positions. So this is really universities themselves finding and identifying funding to invite a scholar to campus. So as I'm imagining the partners previously shared, we have never seen more scholars in need of support. Turkey has been discussed, but we have worked with a large number of scholars from Turkey starting in 2016. The last year has seen many individuals from Afghanistan reaching out to SAR for support. In the last couple of months, many individuals from Ukraine as well. And beyond that, we are seeing applications and work with scholars from Yemen, Ethiopia, Myanmar, Syria, Iran, and beyond. So we, Laura, you raised that point of keeping it in balance with current country situations and also recognizing the needs of scholars who are facing risk worldwide. And that is very much a focus of ours as well. So since some in the audience might be interested in applying to SAR, I thought I would just share a quick overview of our criteria. In terms of who we can assist, we are able to assist professors or academic researchers who've been employed at an accredited higher education institution in their home country. So we look at someone's past history of employment. Obviously, if they've been dismissed due to the risk that they face, that doesn't work against them. So we look at the history of employment, and we also look at the academic publication record. Most of the scholars we work with have a PhD or other terminal degree in their field. I'll note that there are some exceptions to this, given the field and or the country context from which someone is applying. So for example, we have worked with many scholars from Afghanistan who might hold an MA or an MS, but since they have taught with that degree and have academic publications, we have been able to create placements for them. So we look at the country context when making those determinations. We also have a newer program for a demographic we refer to as practitioners at risk, who are really journalists, artists, lawyers, writers, who face risk due to the nature of the work that they do in their activism. So we have sort of a subgroup of the SAR network who are able to create positions for these individuals. And that is a program for which we have a small dedicated funding stream, which helps create a placement for those individuals. An application to SAR consists of the steps here. I won't go into all of them in detail, but I'll say that the first step to applying to Scholars at Risk is to fill out our application online or to reach out to our applications email, which I'll share at the end. Our team is then in touch with those who qualify to gather the remaining materials that we list here. At the very end of our application review, we will reach out for a quick interview with candidates in order to ask any final questions and invite questions from candidates as well. And our process is one where we're careful to really only ask what's needed at each different stage, because we want to balance that many individuals might be applying to a variety of programs, and thus we try to not ask everything up front. So for those who we are able to assist, our support can be broken down into these categories. So as I mentioned, the positions in the SAR network are funded by the universities themselves. So the first step, once we're able to work with a scholar, is to reach out to the network to see which universities are able to offer a position at that time and within that scholar's discipline. Our positions are short-term and temporary. They last anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, and academic years is about average. During the scholar's position, we offer support to both the scholar and the host institution to troubleshoot any issues that might come up. We also work from the very beginning with scholar logistics. We advise around visas, and we really are there to just be a source of support from the first moment that an offer is made to a scholar all the way to the end of the visit. We also have an emergency fund from which we can fund, things like visas and plane tickets, urgent needs that might arise during a scholar's placement. And we also have some funding that can be used for professional development support. So for example, if a scholar is at a host institution and is in need of language training, perhaps the right level of training isn't available at the university at that time, we can fund a course. We also use this funding if a scholar is seeking to present their work at a conference, and if host institution funding isn't available, we support that because we understand that those opportunities help grow a scholar's network and increase options they might see at the end of their visit. And I'll also mention that In the last year, we have utilized a lot of our emergency funding due to dedicated funding from funders to support the needs of Afghan scholars who are displaced in third countries awaiting visas to North America and Europe. So I think as other programs experience, many scholars from Afghanistan might be in Pakistan right now awaiting visa decisions, and we have been able to support the living costs as they wait these decisions. And we also increasingly have been able to offer and make available to host institutions who have offered positions to individuals from Ukraine support from our emergency fund. So if there are any institutions here that would like to be in touch, please do reach out to us and we can share more about what that support looks like. I'll mention also that as we all are aware, a temporary position goes by really quickly. So we work with scholars to chart out their options ahead of a visit's end, which might be in some cases another SAR placement if there is a match in the right time frame for that scholar. It might be an option they identify on their own. It could be relocation to a third country, or if their situation has improved, a return to the home country. And we also seek to advise scholars who are conducting an academic job search on their own. So we offer reviews of job application materials, do mock interviews, and over the years have also offered workshops that are aimed at the academic job search as well. So in case there are host institutions in the audience who are wondering how to first go about hosting a SAR scholar, the first step would be to get in touch with us. We can then seek information from you about the types of considerations that we should take into account when making a match. So we always ask host institutions to consider which departments and faculties have staff who are able to serve as an academic mentor to a scholar, because we know the importance of both support during a placement and also a really good academic fit. And so that's really the place that we start from, because we know that when there is a good match up front and academic support is available, those placements tend to be the best for the scholars who are placed at that institution. And we'll also ask about if there are particular degree requirements or any other considerations that our team should take into account when making a match. I will highlight one last piece that I think is of interest to scholars and also host institutions, and that is the SAR speaker series. So this is an opportunity for scholars to speak at a SAR member institution about their academic work and the situation in their home country. It's a valuable networking opportunity. We have seen scholars following the creation of these new connections, be offered positions or courses by that host institution, or otherwise create contacts that can be helpful for their academic future. And it's also a really good way to create awareness about the situation that is happening in that host country, in that scholar's home country. So if anyone here is currently working with SAR and is interested in learning more about the speaker series, either inviting someone to speak, or if you're a scholar working with SAR to be added to the list of scholars available, please be in touch with your contact at SAR and we can go ahead and move that forward. I will end here, but I wanted to make sure to share a few ways to get in touch. So this first link is our online application, and any queries about applications, if you're someone who's already applied, can go to this apply.scholars@risk@NYU address. And for any institutions or questions about the speaker series, it would be the second address, and I can put these in the chat as well. I think that's everything I wanted to share, but I just wanted to thank everyone for their attention, and I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Rose. I'm giving that back to the audience. Are there any questions that you would like to ask Rose? other than that, let me have to say that I would like to thank everyone for speaking and presenting their organizations and initiatives today. And I think what's important for anyone who's looking for support, and even if you're not sure which organization or which initiative will be the right one for you, just anyways, contact them, and the organizations will also then guide you if they cannot help you, hopefully guide you to maybe another organization or initiative that might be the right one for you. And also for anyone who wants to get involved from the other side and is looking for ways to support or to contribute in whatever capacity, then I hope you also have gotten some ideas and will be able to contact any of the speakers or any of the organizations or initiatives. And with that, again, let me thank you, all the speakers, and let me thank you as participants for bearing with us for 2 hours. And I'm actually very proud that we only run over by 5 minutes, and that you followed up all this information. And if you have any questions, get in touch. And I would like to thank everyone and wish you all a good afternoon wherever you are. And for those that are still in Berlin at the conference, obviously, then a good way home. And also hope to speak to you and see you in other capacities soon. So thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Birgit.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you to all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.